grade gold mines in the world, and then we're running in behind them fairly quickly. The Victorian golden era was the 19th century, as you know, with the gold rush and so on. The 21st century in Victoria has actually been dominated by the Canadians, again, which I'll show fairly soon. But one reason why we spun out of a Canadian company was to put some assets in Victoria into the hands of Australian shareholders. So who are we, or what have we got? We've got a large footprint on what we believe will be a large deposit. So Sunday Creek, we own 100%. We've got more than a 10-kilometre footprint of mineralised trend at Victoria. We've already got exceptional results, which I'll show you, which demonstrate the depth, the grade, and the width of our property, Sunday Creek. We've got a 30-kilometre program of diamond drilling targeted for this year. And we also have a strategic byproduct, which is antimony, and I'll touch on antimony, which is one of these critical minerals that are becoming more important as every balloon crosses Western countries going forward. So Southern Cross, we're listed on the ASX, SXG. We spun out of a Canadian company called Mawson Gold, had our IPO in May last year and became the third best IPO of 2022, which we're very happy about. Mawson Gold remains our largest shareholder at 51%. They're escrowed until May next year, which gives us a fairly tight structure. Market cap of roughly $130 million at the moment. We've got probably about $17 million in the bank today, which gives us enough money to fulfill our strategy. And we own a 10% stake in a company called Nagambi Resources, also listed on the ASX. And that 10% ownership gives us the right of first refusal over more than 3,000 square kilometres in central Victoria in their tenements. Now, getting back to Victoria. So Victoria is one of the major goldfields of the world. And as you may know, more than 80 million ounces have been extracted out of Victoria already since the gold rush of the 1850s. And so alongside the Golden Mile, Victoria generally is one of the two major goldfields of Australia. We control 3 of 9 historic epizonal goldfields, 100% of the Sunday Creek property. I'm not the geologist, I'm a Latin American person, so what do I know about rocks? But what I do know is that there are 2 different styles of gold events that happened in Victoria, an older style called Mesozonal, and that's your Bendigo, that's your Ballarat, and that's where the majority of the gold came out of Victoria in the gold rush days. That's a nuggety refractory style of gold. And what we have in our Melbourne zone, which is what I'm about to talk to you about, is a free gold. It's a disseminated gold, and it's a younger gold event. It's 70 million years younger than this Mesozonal style. And the 2 gold mines that I'm highlighting on this particular graphic here, which we've got, is the Fosterville mine and the Costerfield mine, are 2 of the top 10 gold mines in the world. In fact, Fosterville is the highest grade gold mine in the world. You walk down Collins Street and people on Collins Street don't know that. And not only is it one of the highest gold mine in the world, but is also a significant producer at 500,000 ounces in 2021. But the problem is, well, not the problem, but one of the issues are that both of those 2 gold mines are owned by Canadians, Agnico, Eagle and Mandalay, Fosterville and Costerfield respectively. And they came in around about 6 to 7 years ago and have dominated the Victorian scene. Since then, the profits and the information doesn't really stay in Australia, let alone Victoria, but goes out to Canada. Now, here's a different style of picture of 2 different gold events in Victoria. The orange, these are all exploration drill results from the past 6 to 7 years. The orange is everybody else other than Southern Cross Gold. And what you see in this top left-hand corner is these large dots, which are grade times width, so the size of the hit, across fairly narrow intercepts along the x-axis, and then not very deep, going down the hole. That's your traditional Mesozonal style deposit. What we've done with our 50+ drill holes so far has demonstrated that we're getting these widths way out beyond what traditional Victoria is, and they're also going down deeper. Now, the similarity between us and these two high-grade gold mines is there. Those two have got similar sort of characteristics, being in the same gold event 400 odd million years ago. Okay, Mawson Gold picked up the assets in January 2020. And so when they came along, there was already 5 plus 100 gram meter intercepts at the property, which is why we were interested in it. Mawson then had only one drill rig in the first few years up until our IPO at about here. It was also drilling the other 2 properties that we've got, which I'll quickly touch on. So we still got ourselves, or Mawson got 6 intercepts in that period. But then as we IPO'd in May last year, you can see that we have increased the speed of the drilling because we now have 3 drill rigs on site. But the important thing is in the last 2 months of last year, we really started hitting these high-grade intercepts consistently as the geological team have become more knowledgeable on the style of the deposit, the structure of it, and know where to hit those big intercepts. Just another way, each time we put out a release with a 100 plus gram meter intercept, we were getting on this miner deck top 10. Maybe some of you have seen it before. These are reported intercepts by companies on the ASX anywhere in the world. And we have, in the last 9 months, been on there 10 times. So this is stacking up on a global fashion as well. Now, this is where we get into the 3D model. Okay, so just again, a bit of regional geology. The green area, that's that mesozonal style gold that I spoke to you about, the older style, Bendigo, Ballarat. And then in the east of this map is the Melbourne zone, which is where we're located and where Fosterville and Costerfield located as well. If we go underneath, the structure that is feeding into the Melbourne zone is this area here called the Selwyn block. And that's basically just the source of all the fluids that are coming up to create these epizonal style gold fields. So now we're just going to zoom into the region a little bit more. The yellow dots are, again, older style mesozonal occurrences in central Victoria. And the blue are the epizonals. Now, I'm going to be talking about this particular deposit down the south. That's Sunday Creek, which we own 100%, where we've been doing all our drilling. We do have 2 joint venture properties, Redcastle and RIU. And as I mentioned, they're with joint venture with Ngambie. And as I mentioned, we own 10% in Ngambie. And so this particular area out here is the southern part of the 3,000 odd square kilometres that we've got of right of first refusal over the Ngambie tenements. Again, just taking out those yellow mesozonal style occurrences, we're now left with the epizonal style. So as I mentioned, there are 9 historic epizonal gold fields in Victoria. We control 3 of them, and 2 of the other 6 are the Fosterville, highest grade gold mine in the world, and Costerfield, 7th highest grade gold mine in the world. Costerfield being quite literally 2 kilometres away from our Redcastle joint venture property. But I'm going to concentrate on Sunday Creek, where we're doing all our drilling at the moment. And so we own this 100%. And there are 2 trends within that cut across the property, but I'm just going to worry about the Sunday Creek trend. And so from down in the southwest here, where we're doing our drilling, all the way up to this particular intersection at the end of our property, that's 11 kilometres of trend. Okay, so just remember that, because there's plenty of upside going forward. We're drilling in just 800 metres down the southwest. So as we zoom in, this is a LiDAR. Some of you may have heard about LiDAR. It cuts through topography, so you can see the actual, it cuts through the forest, so you can see the topography of the land. And also we've been doing soil samples. We've done over 1,000 soil samples across that 11 kilometre stretch. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned, we own the freehold actually of the drilling area that we are operating at the moment. And that freehold that we own is roughly that area there. Next door to us is a family that own a quarrying business, so they generally understand the mining sector. And then the rest of it, all the way up here along that 10-kilometre stretch, is state forest, government owned. So in other words, in that 11-kilometre area, there's 3 landowners. We know all 3 landowners. We like all 3 landowners. We get along with all 3 landowners at the moment. We get to drill 12 months a year, and we can drill wherever we want, pretty much anywhere we want. The Victorian government, surprisingly, is very progressive in exploration permitting. So long as we don't cut any tree, it's, as I said, mainly state forest, so long as we don't cut any tree which is any bigger than our arm, then we're allowed to go wherever we want, giving them 2 weeks advance notice. So I'll now just zoom in to our drill area as it is today. I've got 1.2 kilometres here. Essentially, though, we are drilling in about an 800-metre area from west to east. And now, if I get to be a bit tricky, I'm going to zoom in a bit. What I mentioned is that we've got 11 kilometres of stretch, east-west breccia zone, cutting across them northwest structures, and that are these little areas. Oops, sorry. These little areas here is historic mining where these northwest structures hit across the east-west host rock. 50 holes drilled already, 9 holes in the assay lab, which are the yellow. A couple of drill results just very quickly. Down here, we've got 5 metres at 36 and then 36 at 7. I could go in, but I'm losing time. Very quickly, we have 25 vein sets in this particular area, which you can see here in the yellow. So, and they're all that northwest trend, which is where all the mineralisation occurs. The green is the host rock. This is the breccia dike that we have that cuts across the entire property. All the mineralisation happens within that rock as those northwest structures come across it. And then very quickly, that goes all the way up to 10 kilometres. A very exciting opportunity for us. Antimony, critical mineral. I'll talk about it when you come and see me at the booth. Chinese balloons, things like that are only going to help antimony going forward. So thank you very much.
You almost had me all dazzled with your technology that I forgot to watch the clock then for a little while. And then I saw my name on one of the sites too. I thought, that's impressive. There's a Christina, but it's up there with Aftermath and Hog or something as well. So I wasn't that keen on you at that point. But that was a really great presentation. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for starting off session number 2. Oliver Kiddie, he's just leapt up and got into position there. I was warned that he might have a slightly vacant look on his face sitting off on the side. And if that was the case, it wasn't going to be about the presentation. He's into horse racing, this fella here. And apparently he's had a couple of good little shows that we should have known about, like Before the Oaks would have been very, very handy.
Yeah, well, for those that listen, I think it went around at 150 to 1, but...
We'll talk about that with you later on.
We will do.
Today, but this might be a winner that you're going to give to us now. So you're here in the capacity of the executive director of Legend Mining. So Legend is exploring the Rockford project, which is out in the Fraser Range, if you've ever been out there. And they've also recently delivered the 3rd nickel mineral resource estimate for the region at the Mawson deposit. Will you please make him welcome, everyone?
Thanks, Chrissy. Thanks, Stu and Jackson, for the opportunity to present the next chapter in the Legend story. And I suppose that segue in is actually a really good one, because it's you talk about punting and exploration, and they're very, very similar. So you've actually got to have a punt if you're going to go into exploration. And I think in terms of punts, Legend's a very, very good one, a compelling one, and hopefully this presentation will leave you with that. Our standard disclaimer: this presentation will be on the website. A corporate overview of Legend. We've got a current market cap of just north of 140 mil at the current share price, which is just north of, I think it's at 5.5 cents today. We've got 12.8 mil of cash as of the December quarter. Importantly, we've got no debt. Our shareholders, our 2 largest shareholders, are also our joint venture partners in Mark Creasy and IGO. Making up the top 4 is Mark Wilson, who's our MD, and Dave Bailey, a high net worth here in Perth. Our top 20 makes up 63% of our register. And we've got a very loyal, sticky shareholder base. So my time at Legend, 2.5 years, I've seen one movement outside of the top 20. So that just shows that the shareholders we have got at Legend are very much on the journey with us here in the Fraser Range. The other thing to mention, obviously, is the board. The new addition to that board that you see there is Hilary McDonald. Hilary came across to us at Legend late last year. Look, we're really rapt to get Hilary on board. I think it's a big tick for the company to get somebody of Hilary's calibre. A lot of you know Hilary through Northern Star, being Chief Legal Officer and co-sec at Northern Star. So to attract somebody of that quality to Legend speaks volumes. The other really important point that I will touch on in this slide is every single director on that page has skin in the game, as in has bought shares on market. Most recently, you would have seen our MD, Mark Wilson, topped up pre-Christmas, and much to the distaste of our accountant, bought some shares over the Christmas period over into the new year, which was an accounting issue for her. But I think, yet again, it shows support for the company. So the investment highlights for Legend, we're obviously chasing nickel. We're a nickel explorer in the Fraser Range. The ideal thing about the nickel deposits that we're chasing is obviously have copper and cobalt associated with them. We're a dedicated team of explorers at Legend with a track record of discovery. So within Legend, we have discovered 3 of the 4 massive nickel copper occurrences in the Fraser Range. The enviable location is the Fraser Range. The tenement package is a 3,000 square K, a semblance of tenements in the Fraser Range east of Kalgoorlie. The Mawson mineral resource, we delivered that 2 weeks ago. That's the maiden resource. And as Chrissy touched on, it's the 3rd published mineral resource, sulfide resource in the Fraser Range. And that was basically a foundation to grow upon. In addition to that, we have a pipeline of targets locked and loaded, ready to go. And that's the exciting part about this presentation. Highly leveraged to success on the back of drill intercepts. Importantly, as I touched on, well funded to execute. And one important point is that 90 cents in the dollar at Legend goes in the ground. Just quickly on ESG, Legend prides itself on maintaining excellent stakeholder relationships, and this can be found in our ESG policies on our website. So why nickel? Scrolling through a myriad of forecasts and the like, I landed on this one from Wood Mackenzie, where the use in batteries will double the global nickel demand by 2040. As you can see there, dominantly a stainless steel market as we sit today, but transitioning to more into these battery precursors by 2040. The summary of that is that we need a lot more nickel. You can see from the basic supply-demand equation there, we're going to need a lot more nickel, a lot more mines. A lot more mines means a lot more discoveries. Those discoveries where Legend comes into the equation. We're not looking for your standard Archean style average 25,000 tonne of nickel. We're out in the Fraser Range looking for the Proterozoic style nickel deposits. These are the big ones, the ones that shift the needle. These are plus 300,000 tonne of nickel like Nova. Where are we? We're in the Fraser Range, like I said, around 250, 300 Ks east of Kalgoorlie. We've assembled just around 3,000 square Ks of what we believe is one of the most underexplored nickel belts in the world. Our project location is sitting about 150 kilometres north of the Nova mine operated by IGO, primarily targeting these Proterozoic style deposits like I touched on. These are the ones that shift the needle. You're talking hundreds of thousands of tonnes of contained nickel. I think it's really important too to touch on the infrastructure. People think east of Kalgoorlie out the Trans line, literally no man's land, but we are supported by some phenomenal infrastructure, namely the Trans-Australia Railroad, which runs through the southern portion of our tenure. I think when I'm putting this slide deck together as well, it was really important to touch on the journey of Legend, because Legend very much has been of the mantra going the distance in the Fraser Range. If you look at 2014, the assemblance there post the Nova discovery in July 2012, to borrow a quote from Dolly Parton, it's pretty much the coat of many colours, and that's probably the first and last time you'll hear a Dolly Parton quote at a resources conference. Fast forward to 2016, Legend has assembled a dominant land holding here in the Central Fraser Zone, one of 5 players. Fast forward to 2023, and now you can see we're one of 3 main players and the second largest player in the belt behind IGO. Importantly, in this time, there's been the discovery of Silvernite and now the discovery of Mawson. That makes 3 deposits in addition to Nova. And Chrissy touched on earlier in one of the earlier presentations in the earlier session around 10 baggers. Well, if you take Legend at 2016 market cap circa 20 million to where we are today at 140 million, those that have had shares along the journey are obviously in a very good space. So Mawson, as I touched on about 2 weeks ago, we released our maiden resource for Mawson. The rationale behind this was to create a foundation and a combination of the work to date at Mawson and a foundation to grow upon. A few key points around the resource itself. It's very shallow in nature. It's from 65 metres down to just over 300 metres. As you can see there, it just about sticks out of the ground. From a de-risking side of things, the metallurgy is excellent. We can produce separate nickel cons and copper concentrates at excellent recoveries. There's no deleterious elements. The Fe-MgO ratio is absolutely outstanding from a blending scenario. And then from a mining studies perspective, we're actually de-risked this by completing the level 1 flora and fauna, which obviously takes a fair bit off the timeline as well. Importantly there, the mineralisation remains open. We know we've got additional holes in here to drill, which will increase tonnage. But in addition to that, we know this mineralisation has come from somewhere. Where that mineralisation has come from, we're looking at the seismic, and the seismic is guiding us with potential plumbing for where this mineralisation, where this intrusion has come from and the associated mineralisation. This is a bit of a snapshot of some of the prelim data from the reprocessing, which is underway at the moment. We're highly encouraged from what we're seeing from this reprocessing. It's allowing us to fine-tune the data and therefore fine-tune drill targets to be tested in Q2 this year. The other major prospect that we have in the Fraser Range is octagonal. And octagonal was the third massive sulphide occurrence in the Fraser Range. Importantly, I've drawn that line on the screen. It sits on this regional structure which connects Nova, Silvernite, octagonal and Magnus to the north. We spent north of $1 million last year acquiring a very large plus 24 square K 3D seismic survey across octagonal. Look, we've had a look at the prelim data from that over the last week, and it's literally Christmas come early for the technical team. We're absolutely chomping at the bit to get into this and drill test this in 2023. You ask why we're excited about octagonal. Well, you can see there on the schematic, that's a 1-for-1 scale of Nova on the left, on the aeromagnetic feature, octagonal on the right. We're talking about identical mineralisation, same host structure, same fold pattern, same host rocks. The only difference is the basal contact where the mineralisation is at Nova has been tested. The Nova ore body has been delineated. At octagonal, the intrusion is about a third thicker than what the Nova intrusion is, and that basal contact hasn't been tested. We've completed the 3D seismic, which will allow us to map that basal contact. We'll have that data over the coming weeks. But in addition to that, we've got some other compelling geophysical targets which tie in with existing drilling, which make us really believe that octagonal really could be an elephant. Some of the drilling that was completed based on the IP survey, which is these hash areas here, has produced some of this material that we're seeing, which is semi-massive and massive nickel copper sulfide. We know the IP is picking up the mineralisation. This is on the side wall of the intrusion. What lies below? One of the things that was done at octagonal, which was a Creasy Group asset before it rolled into Legend, was the AMT survey. And intriguingly, this AMT corridor lights up with this major AMT feature here at depth at the base of the intrusion. That lines up 1-to-1 with the IP. We know the IP is massive, is representing nickel copper sulfide. What does this AMT feature represent? That's incredibly intriguing. We're not just about Mawson and octagonal. These prospects come from somewhere, and it comes through this target generation pipeline that we've got at Rockford. We've got numerous targets at generation stage and identification right up to the resource definition now of Mawson. We've got a pipeline of targets across 3,000 square Ks. The thing is, with the amount of critical data that we now have, having been in the belt for 7 years, we've got the critical data mass, which allows us to understand how to find these intrusions. And we're very quickly turning it into a binary process about which ones we should follow up and which ones we shouldn't. A few of these areas which we released of these targets late last year, areas W, X and Y, are a few more of these prospective intrusions which have nickel copper mineralizations, albeit low level. They're supported by EM, but importantly, they plot in the right fields. They plot in the fields of the mineralized intrusions of Octagonal, Nova, Mawson. These are slated for drill testing, which will kick off towards the end of next month. And like I said, that will bring up the next pipeline of targets in the Fraser Range. Got my 2-minute warning. So as always, we like to touch on the support that we get from recognised industry professionals. Look, it's been tough, as everybody in the room would understand, as explorers to get high quality professionals and help us take a ticket, get in queue. We've got some fantastic support from some professionals out there, and they're very much on the journey with us at Legend. So a quick look at our exploration schedule for the first half of this year. Busy, as I said, leading up to June 30. We're obviously right in the midst of getting the seismic reprocessing at the moment. We're seeing the prelim data of that. We're incredibly excited from what we're seeing from that prelim data. That'll fold into modelling and drill targeting, and that will kick off in later April. So in summary, the compelling investment case, I've talked about nickel. It's very much the right commodity at the right time in the cycle. I've talked about the team. We've got a dedicated team, explorations in our discoveries in our DNA. As I touched on, directors and staff has skin in the game at Legend. We've got the enviable ground holding in the Fraser Range of what we believe is a world-class nickel belt. And most importantly, we're well funded to execute. Thank you, and come and see us at the booth if you've got any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver Kiddie. Now, that mobile phone just reminded me that I neglected part of my duties this morning. So if you are in here with your mobile phone, and who isn't, can you just make sure it's turned onto silent? I was slightly guilty of that this morning myself, because I put my phone down somewhere when I was talking to someone and I lost it. I lost it. Hold on a second. I have never seen you without a smile. There it is. I was going to say, I've never seen this guy without a smile on his face. He's like, yeah, you always say butchers have always got a smiling face. This guy is one of those geologists who is always smiling, and usually it's with pretty good reason. He said, had some pretty decent finds, haven't you, over the last, is it 20 years or is it a bit longer?
I always say it's handy to be lucky.
I think you're pretty lucky, and who knows, this one might be a good one for us to get involved in too. Robert Waugh is the man who's joined us up on stage now. He is the Managing Director of Musgrave Minerals, GEO, and he's had discoveries across multiple commodities. So we're talking nickel, copper, uranium and gold. You've got just about the full gamut there for us. So Rob's current focus is in the Q Gold project, which is up in WA's Murchison district. Would you please make him very welcome, everyone?
Thanks, Chrissy. And thanks to RIU, thanks to Stu and Simon, putting on another great conference, and pleasure to be here. I'll take you through the Q Gold project. No lithium and rare earths, unfortunately, but we think gold's on the uptrend in 2023. One of the key investment criteria I've been told, and I listen to, buy low, sell high, gold's low. 2023, dual focus for us, exploration and development. On the exploration side, we're not going on Collins Street. We're in Q. So we're 100% Musgrave ground. We also have a joint venture with Evolution. So we're focusing this presentation on the 100% Musgrave ground. New discoveries, lots of exploration upside. Our rig's out turning at the moment, and a second rig due to arrive in about a week. On the development side, Anthony Buckingham's joined us, running the development story for us. We're completing a stage 1 PFS, hoping to have that out to the market in late March this year. Looking at the early stage, the early years of production from dominating by the open cut resources we have at Q. Corporately, we're well cashed up. End of December, we had 14.6 million in the bank. We have a strong shareholder base, and our key shareholders have been very stable over the journey. And as you can see, we're in a relatively low point in the market. We think gold has a lot of upside in 2023. Very experienced and stable board. A number of the board members are here today, so you can see us in the booth. We're in a district that has excellent infrastructure. We've got operating mines around us, existing processing plants, and we're in a fairly unique position. We've got really high-grade gold, very close to surface, in an area with great infrastructure. We have a strong joint venture with Evolution, and we're in a pretty good gold price environment. ESG is an important component of what we do. We're focused on a number of aspects of that. You can see this presentation in detail. It's on the ASX and also on our website. Strong interaction with the communities in which we operate. The backbone for our resources are the high-grade component. That break of day trend hosts the break of day deposit and the White Heat deposit. Hosts 327,000 odd ounces at 10 grams. And that generally starts from about 4 meters below surface under this thin hard pan cover. Margin is incredibly important. High grade will deliver strong margins moving forward. So that means you can translate through any gold price environment and still make money. The White Heat mosaic deposit, again, as we talked about, modest size, but starting very close to surface and some great intersections. Lots of intersections here over the 100 gram mark. And again, last year alone, we're in that top, that minor deck, top 10 intersections on 3 occasions. And that's globally. The 2 lodes at White Heat in long section there with a preliminary pit optimized around them. Just to get people in perspective, pretty much anything that's coloured blue and above is over a gram metre, and then the reds are generally over 20 gram metres. So some very high grades through that deposit. Integration of geoscience is a key component of what we do, and it's how we make discoveries. So we don't only use our internal expertise, we go outsource expertise from consultants as well. And this just really delivered a pipeline and a range of targets for us. So we've been able to identify generally these trends through the gravity image. The lows are the less dense rocks, the reds and the whites, so the more dense rocks. These blue lines are the structures. These are the systems that host a lot of the mineralization. And what we're finding is these cross-linked structures in this northwest orientation. And I've just put an example on in here. These are trending across the stratigraphy, and where we're getting these structures intersect at the right host lithologies is where we're finding the best high-grade deposits. And the deposits here are hosted within different lithologies from dolerites through to felsics. Contacts are important, but generally the higher grade is within a high titanium basalt unit and within the dolerites. It's a little bit easier to see on this image, which is a Landsat image, same as the previous image, same context in area. And this is the drilling. So this is our Big Sky deposit in here, over 2.6 kilometres of strike. We can see it's hosted within this linear trend. And then our Lena and break of day system on this trend. And we've been able to identify other trends that we're just drilling at the moment. The Waratah trend out here only drill tested over about 600 metres of that strike. And then most recently, this trend out here, under shallow cover and out further to the east and almost no drilling on it. So we put our first holes in there into the basement that were released today and a number of intersections in those, but really broad space drilling. So at 400 metre space traverse lines. And to put that in perspective, these are 400 metre space traverse lines. We're getting intersections of gold. The break of day and wide heat zones are roughly around 100 metres a strike. Big Sky, again, as I touched on, just put some more results out this morning. Those results are generally below the optimised pits or outside the optimised pits. Some good numbers, more tonnage and lower grade in these type of systems. So we will be blending these type of systems with the higher grade break of day mineralisation. And again, the Waratah trend, this is a new trend. We're waiting for some more results coming back from Waratah, but narrow and high grade again. So these are outside, this Waratah trend is outside the current resource. So this will be added to the resource later in the year. And similarly, Amarillo, another deposit, along strike from Big Sky, new discovery over the last 12 months, and this will be added to the resource later this year as well. So the intent is to grow the resource and at the same time progress development studies. Again, you can see some pretty good grades in there, 7 metres at 23, including a metre at 100. As part of the pre-feasibility studies we're doing, Anthony's looking at pit optimizations, and this is the break of day white heat leaner area, and we can see the preliminary wireframes and lows in green, and then the pit outlines you can see on top of that, and it gives you a perspective of scale. So we're looking at over 1.2 kilometres of strike, 400 metres wide. This is the break of day pit, wide heat mosaic where we saw the long sections, and then the leaner pit sitting up here. The Waratah trend that we've just been having a look at sits out here. The work involved in the stage 1 PFS. So the stage 1 PFS will be focused on the indicated component of our resource, which is just over 400,000 ounces. It's important to note that as far as ASX is concerned, PFS needs to focus on the indicated resources. So there's still a lot of resources we have that won't be in the current stage 1 PFS, and we'll convert those from inferred to indicated, and that'll lead us through to a stage 2. But what we want to do is show to the market the value in these high grade ounces we currently have near surface by having this stage 1, and potentially how much money can be generated in the first 4 to 5 years of mine life. This just takes you through the components of the PFS that we're doing leading into in delivery in late March, what's been completed, what's ongoing. We've had new mining leases recently granted late last year over 2 of our deposits, White Heat Mosaic and Big Sky. Existing mining leases are already over the other deposits. We also have a strong joint venture with Evolution. So we've been focusing this talk on this area in green. The Evolution JV extends for about 12 kilometres under Lake Austin. Some good results been coming out of that. Evolution have recently earned their 75% interest in that property, that part of the property. Currently doing assessment on what they've got. Recent drilling finished in December. Some good numbers coming through for that. We've got ground just south of Mount Magnet as well. And really this is an opportunity. So this is held by prospectors for the last 20 years. Limited work was done. It's only 5 kilometres south of Mount Magnet itself. And we're seeing a continuation of a couple of the key structures at Mount Magnet. Hill 50 fault and the Latecomer fault controlling some of the mineralisation out Mount Magnet. They continue south into this ground. There are opportunities, we think, here to discover more of this granodiorite-hosted mineralisation similar to the Iridanus discovery that Ramelius have made in the last few years. Geochem's underway. We're doing more geochem and then hopefully drilling roughly around June at Mount Magnet South. The work we're doing is ongoing. We've got drill assays pending for a number of prospects. This drilling was undertaken in December. That's some high-grade targets north of Break of Day and the Waratah trend. RC drilling has just recommenced on a number of our targets. That recommenced this week. Currently drilling at Leviticus. Aircore drilling will test some new targets will start in about 2 weeks' time. Jonathan Goff, our exploration manager, has done a great job, made the Mosaic discovery, and you can talk to him in a booth about the plans moving forward for our exploration. Resource infill and essential drilling will be ongoing. We want to continue to convert inferred resources to indicated. And then, as I mentioned, Mount Magnet South, the Evolution JV, again, a component of what we're doing, and the stage 1 pre-feasibility study work. So Anthony Buckingham is running with that, and we're looking forward to getting that out in late March. So just to summarise, high grade, existing resource base, we're getting great met recoveries as well. Infrastructure's good, location, and lots of exploration upside. High grade gold is quite unique and not much of it close to surface in WA. So we think there's definitely opportunity. Thanks and welcome to chat in the booth. Thanks, Chrissy.
Sounds very fair. Does anyone else watch The Office? He looks like Steve Carroll, doesn't he? Very talented actor. You're a very talented gentleman in this room as well. I've got a couple of you moving around, and while you're just doing that, I'll just come down and introduce you all to our new best friend down here. What's your name, sir? Oh, that's an interesting name, isn't it? Your parents were very creative. How about your mate, Kenneth? Do you know this fella?
So I don't know.
I'd disown him as well. It was an important phone call.
The airport this afternoon, and so I was looking at the route, how long did it take to get there. I've also to go and buy some flowers for Valentine's Day. So can I suggest for any person here, go and get this done today. Go and raid flowers for your wife or your special person.
You're a good man, Trevor Connell. You know what, you'd like some winning investments as well too. That'd be good. Invest in your relationship. That's very well said. Rob's looking at him having a bit of a laugh there. Do you know I was coming in today to work? The lead article on the news was all about how we need to, decrease inflation, blah, 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 doom, gloom, my mortgage rate's going up. And then the next, or about the third article was about how much money everyone's spending today on Valentine's Day, $300 million around Australia on Valentine's Day. I reckon the government should just can Valentine's Day and save my mortgage. That would have been a lot less pain for me. All right, look at this smiling, happy fellow over here. I don't know why he's smiling and happy. He's got a wife. He's got 3 kids, 5 guinea pigs, 4 chickens. What else have you got? Oh, 1 dog. Actually, you should have 2 dogs, I think, Mr. Kininmonth.
Yeah, only 1.
It looks pretty relaxed. He actually rode in here today from where he lives up towards the northern beaches. He is here today as Chief Geologist for Eagle Mountain Mining. His name is Fabio Vergara. Yes, he is Italiano. See? But Eagle Mountain Mining, of course, is a copper company. They are really well positioned to meet the transition to electrification. And Fabio is going to tell us all about it. Would you please make him welcome?
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I would like to also thank Tim Mason, who is the CEO of the company and is currently traveling back from the US. And if you want to catch up with him, he's going to be here on Thursday. So Eagle Mountain is advancing the Oracle Ridge copper project in Arizona. Before we jump into the presentation, the standard disclaimer that you can find in our presentation on the website. So I think the goal of the presentation today is to give you 4 reasons to invest in Eagle Mountain. And the 4 reasons are copper and the future of the copper market, the company itself, the jurisdiction we operate in, which is Arizona, and then the project we are advancing, Oracle Ridge, which has a large resource base, has historical production in the 1990s, has had also low emission potential and exploration upside. So let's start from the copper market. I think most of you are familiar with the copper thematic, so I won't go into the details. Just want to point you out to this line here, which is showing you the average copper grade for underground mines between 2005 and 2020. So we start at 1.4 here, and the trend is clearly down, and we're roughly at 1.15 at the moment. Now, our average grade in the resource is 1.45, so sits up here, which is, good. On the right-hand side, it's just a chart of the stock levels for the London Metal Exchange for the last 5 years. I'm no expert, but clearly the trend is down. But enough talk about the big picture and what's happening in other parts of the world. I think what makes it interesting is look at our neighborhood. So what's happening here in Australia? That is telling us that this electrification thing is actually happening. Well, in the news recently, in 2022, after 28 years, Toyota Camry, for the first time, was not the best-selling sedan in Australia, and was replaced by the Tesla Model 3. So that's telling, in my view. And when we look at infrastructure, there is a project currently being installed in Kwinana, which is, for those of you not in WA, not from WA, it's just a half an hour south of Perth. It's a previous power station site where Synergy, which is the electricity provider for WA, is partnering with this other company here to install a battery storage facility. And I also say I'm Italian, and that company is Italian, so I'm even more proud to present it to you today. So we talk about copper market. Now let's talk about the company. So let's start from, we have about 300 million shares in issue. Price is hovering in the low 20s, 20 cents. We have 6.3 million in cash at the end of December, plus 2 million that came in recently after the AGM, and market cap of about 71 millions undiluted. And clearly, when we talk about companies, we need to talk about people. And the board, I don't think, needs many introductions for those of you that have been around long enough. I want to point to you something that is probably missed occasionally about the board, which is the variety of skill set that they bring to the table. So Rick is a lawyer, Charlie is a geologist and processing engineer, Roger is an accountant, Tim Mason is an underground engineer, and Mark Pitts, company secretary, is also an accountant. Also, want to mention Brett Rowe, which has been trading shares for the best part of 20 years, so provides us with that side of the equation as well. All right, so Arizona, clearly United States. Going back. So we're here, southwestern US, and it's a good place to be for various reasons, but especially if you're in mining, it's an outstanding place to be. So Arizona produced 70% of the copper mined in the US in 2022, roughly 900,000 tons, and is home to many large real elephants projects. So what you see there is just a map of central southern Arizona. We are here, just northeast of Tucson, and around us, there's many large-scale porphyry projects. So it's a good place to be in. And just to put things in context a bit more, let's go back to what I was showing before. So this is essentially the same slide, but instead of having Arizona underneath, you do have Western Australia. So Perth is here, Bamboo is down there, about an hour and a half away. And within 2 hours from Perth, you have all these amazing copper projects. So it's clearly a great place to be. Great copper projects means skilled people, means infrastructure. So it's a good neighborhood. What about Oracle Ridge? Well, Oracle Ridge is just north of Tucson, as I showed you. And this is just a site layout, Marble Peak, that you'll hear about more in the presentation. There's 2 portals here, the windy road to get to the mine. And down here is the tailings storage facility, which is currently closed, but we control the ground, so we could reopen it when we want to go back to mining. Now, for the non-geologists in the room, now we're going to slice through this mountain here, and I'm going to show you the section, geological section. So that's how the geology looks like. So up here, Marble Peak, we have the sediments on top in pale blue, sediments at the bottom as well in pale blue, And in between, there is a granite called the leatherwood intrusive that is actually what we understood to be the causative body of the skarn hosted copper, silver, and gold mineralization. So it's very important, this contact here. And I was trying to explain it to my son recently, what that means, and finding a good analog. And I think that's a good analog. It's almost lunchtime as well. So, Marble Peak is up here, and below as well, the sediments, and then the leatherwood in between, and then the all-important juices, which is what we are after here. So what have we defined there? So if we focus on that area, we have defined a resource that currently stands at 16.5 million tons at 1% copper cutoff, with a grade of 1.45% copper, 15 grams per ton silver, and some gold as well. Now, there's a good part of the resource that is actually in the measured and indicated category, and has been mentioned previously, these are where you want to be when you get into studies, because inferred are always difficult to bring into studies. And in the last 2 years, we went from 6.6 million tons to 10.8 million tons, including declaring the first JOR-compliant measured resource in the process. Not only that, the resource has also another advantage, which is cutoff optionality. So what I said previously, the cutoff of the resource is 1%, but if you lower the cutoff to 0.8%, what happens to the resource? Well, it actually jumps from 16.5 million tons to 26.3 million tons, with a sort of negligible reduction in copper grade of 14%. You get 38% increase in contained copper, which is clearly a big jump. That would be something we would consider if copper prices really start taking off in the medium term. All right, so I mentioned another advantage of the project. It's the historical production. The mine was producing between 1990 and 1996. It was a relatively small operation, about 250, 300 kilotons per annum. And we strongly believe that it's a great way of de-risking a project, because it was operational and in relatively recent times. Down here is the historical mill that has since been removed. And then on the right-hand side is our Director of Exploration, Brian Paul, enjoying a ride underground on the little Kubotas. So those drives that I showed you before, there's about 18 kilometers of them. And on the slide here, you see in black the developments, including stopes, and then the outline of the resource. What I want to highlight is actually that the drives gives us access to probably between 65 and 70% of the resource. So we can go in there, we can touch the deposit, we can touch the mineralization. The only part that doesn't have it is the south here, because that's what we did, the Talon area that we recently expanded. The underground has recently been refurbished because we are focusing on underground drilling at the moment, as well as underground sampling. Another reason why production de-risk project is because you can actually have a peek and see what was actually sold previously. So that's a Glencore purchase order from 1996. I can't show you the details, of course, but I can show you the assays of the concentrate, 35% copper, good silver, good gold, and importantly, no penalties. So the concentrate was high grade and was saleable. I've been cheeky, I have to say, because the average was probably around 29%, but 35 is still pretty good. I want to show you that way. One of the other concepts that we're trying to convey to the market, and it's a bit difficult to explain, is the fact that the mine has some intrinsic characteristic that allows us to be potentially a low emission producer. So here, there's a pretty complex slide. It's just saying that we want to use gravity to assist us in mining. And to explain it, this is a slide showing you the typical Western Australian landscape, nice and flat. But the exploration team has been really good. They found 2 deposits, one close to surface and one depth. So let's put an open pit around it with a mill, TSF, and also a nice decline, and go and mine. Now, what does that mean? That means that I'm moving material from a lower elevation, in both cases, to a higher elevation. So I'm actually going against gravity. My trucks are moving uphill loaded. Our situation is the reverse. What we have is a mineral deposit that sits up on a mountain, and our mill, TSF, are actually down the hill. So we can really use gravity. Now the little truck is happy, the arrow is green, because it's going downhill loaded. Now, what does that mean? And actually, the differential is about 400 meters using the lower portal and gets to 550 if you use the upper portal. So there's a decent amount of differential there. Why it's important? Because that's the ideal situation to use electric trucks. It's the ideal situation to use conveyor belts, generate electricity. That also, in terms of the trucks, has flow-on effects on ventilation requirements in the mine. And there's also another thing that tends to go down with gravity really well, which is water. The mine is dry, completely dry. We have some water pooling maybe in 5% of the stopes. Otherwise, there's no pumps, and we can access and go everywhere. And also potential for alternative power arrangements like hydro and et cetera. One of the last sort of great advantages of the mine, there is exploration upside. This is a slide from a recent announcement, shows you the outline of the resource, and then some of the sample location that we got from the Hartman Homestake mine. These are rock chip sample we collected from underground, about 500 meters from the resource, good copper, good silver, and importantly, good zinc and lead as well, which is quite unique. We didn't see that in all our drilling at the project so far. So we think it's a bit of a different system. And that sort of little mine there has never been drilled. All right, so current activities. What we're doing, as I said, we are leveraging the underground infrastructure. So we are focusing on that advantage we have that we can access mineralization. And that's our managing director, underground touching mineralization. I can't call it ore, unfortunately, mineralization. Anyway, so we're focusing on two things, essentially underground drilling, focusing on resource upgrade and metallurgical drilling, and then underground sampling, both to improve the quality of our MRE, as well as potentially gathering more metallurgical samples and even bulk samples for test works. And while that's happening on site in the office, the team is busy starting to put together information for our studies. We just engaged an in-country study manager. They used to work with Sandfire Resources, and also we are progressing mining, metallurgical, environmental permitting, and water studies. So this is sort of a general timeline showing final goal is essentially embark into feasibility study as soon as possible. So in summary, I said there were 4 key reasons to invest in Eagle Mountain. First, the copper market. We provide exposure to a market that is tightening. We have a strong leadership team, very solid company. We work and operate in a great jurisdiction. And then Oracle Ridge has a high-grade JORC resource, has historical production that de-risks the project, as a project that has intrinsically low emission potential and also exploration upside. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now, Ausgold is next up on stage to present at RIU Explorers. MD Dr. Matthew Greentree is joining us on stage. You're a rampant overachiever, Matthew. I went down the rabbit hole looking for things about you. You graduated with first-class honours to start with, and you moved on to your PhD in geology. Kicking goals all the way through, didn't you? So it's interesting that you've become involved in this story, the Ausgold story. There must be something in it. So we're interested to hear why it is that you are backing them. So Ausgold's aim, of course, is to become the next mid-tier gold producer through their flagship Kininmonth gold project here in WA. Outline to us why you believe there are massive opportunities for us in what you're doing. Please make them welcome, everyone.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I'm slightly embarrassed, I'm blushing. But look, I think since I was standing here last year, a lot of things I've said have actually happened, and we're really proud with the achievements through 22. And I'll take you through some of those, but we haven't stopped. There's a lot more going on with Ausgold. This is one of the largest undeveloped open cut projects, free milling projects, that is, in Western Australia, if not Australia. So we're really proud of that achievement. What you see there is the historic operation that was in the late 90s. What we're talking about now is an order of magnitude larger than what they they did back in those days. So I'll take you through where we're at. So this presentation's on a website, so please read the disclaimer if you're interested. In terms of the company, very good, strong and growing institutional shareholding. Dundee Goodman hold 12.5% of the stock. The directors hold 12. So we're all very invested in what we're doing here, and we're really pleased to see Jupiter Precious Metals Fund join us in our capital raise last year. So we're still well funded. We're really getting on with the project to date. We've got a 25,000 metre drill campaign underway across our tenements, but also heavily focused on extensions to our current 2.16 million ounce resource. Last year, as I said, we put out a large resource update that added 960,000 ounces at $11 per resource ounce. So a very efficient exploration. Part of that is very good geoscience knowledge. We understand this ore body. We have got some good direct targeting methods, including downhole EM. It works very well on this deposit and has kept the costs down. And we're applying that to the region. We've got 5,500 square kilometres in the southwest. Now, I joined the company about 6 years ago. It was a very unfashionable end of town. Chalice did a good job and found Julimar. Interest came in. You can see Anglo-Americans there. FMG's also to our east, you know, and it's really opening up, not just as a gold province, but as a copper, nickel and lithium province. And there's no surprises there. You can see big projects like Boddington, which is a gold project, and Greenbushes there, which is one of the largest spodumene deposits in the world, if not the largest. What we're doing is really focused on gold. However, I will talk a little bit to some of our non-gold exploration. What we also completed last year is a pre-feasibility study. And what that delivered for us is a very large ore reserve. And I mentioned this is the largest open pit free milling project in Western Australia. There's not many companies at our stage as a developer that start off with over 1 million ounces in ore reserve. That's what we're doing, but we think we can do better than that as well. We kicked off a DFS earlier this year. We're fairly well advanced in terms of a lot of the metallurgy. We sort of front-ended a lot of the geotech and metallurgy in the PFS work, but we're also doing some more studies on that. Really great economics around that. And part of that was driven because of where we are. I think Fabio showed a fantastic slide of the US with the location in this around Perth. So we're not actually far out of Perth. We're only 3.5 hours out of Perth driving. And that really alludes to a lot of benefits in terms of sealed roads. We've got a grid connection to site. We're having that looked at as part of the DFS studies to upgrade, provide a secure, stable form of energy. And you can see a lot of the producers over the last quarter were suffering with the inflation of diesel prices. So that's critical in this day and age. But also having supportive townships nearby really is quite an attractive destination, because that's the other thing that companies are finding difficult at the moment is workforce. And I think the location of this project really is a very attractive destination to work and even have a family. So this is a snapshot of what came out of that PFS work. It's 11-year life of mine. There was some options there to have a much longer life of mine. And really what we're looking at now as part of, and alongside DFS is some of that optionality, both in the mining schedule, but also the plant capacity. A large ore reserve of 1.28 million ounces. Now, that's an interesting number there. The head grade is 1.25 grams per tonne, but early in the life of mine, those first 6 years, it's much higher. Particularly in the first 3 years, it's closer to 2 grams. And you can see that in the high internal rate of return of over 40%, the higher production profile and a relatively high NPV and the short payback period. So that's really interesting. And I'll take you through some of the geology, why that's the case. There's also what we're doing now is looking with the drill bit further afield to see if we can supplement that for a longer period as well. This is a really interesting slide. It's based on the quarterlies coming out in December. We're relatively cheap. There's a lot of room to grow with the current asset and valuation. I've taken Bellevue out of our average enterprise to resource valuation there because they're really on an outlier on that curve. But the interesting thing is they're very similar ore reserve size. And I think when we come out with our DFS, we'll increase that number. So really worth watching this space. A few of the previous speakers have also spoken about the percentage of measured and indicated in our resource. It's very high in this resource. We've done a lot of work on the geology in the front end. So it's about 83% measured and indicated. So what's happening? Big drill campaign, 25,000 metres. There's about half and half regional and extensions to our current resource. So we've got a resource update in the third quarter of this year. That's, works on that already. We'll also, on the back of that, release our definitive studies. So busy end to the year in that third quarter, definitely keep an eye out. But along the way, we've got a lot of exploration happening, both regional, near mine. We've also looking at lithium because our proximity to both Raidland Slope and Greenbushes, it's a very, very prospective area, and we have a number of pegmatites through our tenements. And look, alongside the DFS, of course, we're looking at permitting those studies to ensure that this project's on track for development. So what's a project look like? It's a long mineralised trend of over 17 kilometres that we know from soils and air core drilling. The main project's really centred around what we call the central zone, around that Jinkers area, which was the pit I showed on that first front page. There's some very high grades in there, and that's really what drives the economics as well as these high grade shoots. So been able to map those out using our good, strong geological model and understanding, as well as the downhole EM has been essential to that. I've gone through a lot of this, but I think there's a couple of things I'd like to reinforce here. This is a very simple metallurgical flow sheet, good recoveries, very strong gravity component as well. We've looked at this as a 3 million tonne throughput, but there's potential for expanding that as well. Very conventional flow sheet, and having that low, stable access to low cost energy is important, and also gives us access to renewables as well. The other thing that we've done, we've been fairly conservative, both on the pit optimizations and the financial model. So when you look at the price of 2,300 Australian that we've used in those numbers, it's well below the current spot price, and there's a lot of leverage in that. So I'll quickly go through our exploration plans. We've already advanced those fairly significantly over the last couple of months. So we started in late November, early December. We're really working in and around the farmers here. So we've got a good rapport with the local landholders, and really they understand what we're doing here. So being able to work alongside their activities has been really important to advancing the project. So looking really, just go back here. A couple of areas of focus, central zone. We're looking, and we put out some numbers this morning, 16 at 2.4 grams per tonne from this area in the south. We're really starting to build out some good knowledge area, and there's a couple of areas that we're really touching up there with the drill bit before we go into DFS. And down Jinkers South. So that hole there was 6 metres at 2 grams. Now that's really interesting because that's 400 metres away from the current resource, and it's along very wide space drilling. So we've got some options there to really expand this resource because there's a lot of room to look at that. As I mentioned, this is an ore body with very high grade components to it. It's a folded ore body, and that's what's driving these zones. And you can see that there, Jinkers North, this high grade zone here, and Jinkers South, which is an important part of the ore body as well. And part of that is also looking underground. So these numbers we see here were completed, the drilling was completed after the last resource announcement. So they're yet to be added. And the optimization, of course, doesn't include that, but we expect to see that open pit drop down into that. So an expansion of the ore reserve, but also then we start considering the down plunge component as an underground. So that's work that's in the pipeline. We won't come out in the DFS, but there's an option here to have a high-grade underground as well as a very large open pit operation. Moving to the southern zone, Dingo is about 10% of the current ore body, and although it's a small part of it, as I said, some encouraging results from down here, well outside the current resource. There's some options now to start really looking at the exploration there and see if we can really expand and perhaps unlock some multi-million ounce potential at Katanning. Now, what I'll do briefly is just talk about our regional exploration. I think there's a lot of excitement here from our team, particularly on this northeastern zone up here. We recently farmed into what we call the Stanley project, and a recent discovery at Duggan there with some very high-grade results. We're applying our knowledge from the Katanning project to the belt. We've learnt a lot from the exploration at a resource scale, and now we're applying that to our regional exploration. Alongside our aircore program, we're also looking, as I said, at the lithium potential because of our proximity. You know, it's a lot of value in that, although we're not talking about becoming a lithium explorer as such, that there's some options there to monetize that in the future. So just briefly, the Stanley project, you can see some absolutely phenomenal grades there. It's within an easy trucking distance of the main Katanning project. And what we're looking at there is, can we string those together as a resource? It fitted very nicely with our tenement package to the north and south, areas like Wishbone, areas that we're looking at the moment. And there's real potential there to really unlock these areas as a potential resource. And now Duggan was a discovery earlier last year, and you can see again some substantial grades there. We've just completed a round of drilling on that, so some results will be coming through fairly shortly. But I think it's an exciting time looking at not just the expansion of the current resource base, but also looking at another mining centre in and around the Katanning belt. So we're really unlocking this region, and I'll just leave you with a few thoughts as we leave. This is 100% Ausgold, large resource base, one of the largest undeveloped projects in Australia, long life of mine and an early payback. So it's a very sound investment proposition. We've got a large exploration campaign underground. We think this is a lot bigger, and we're unlocking the multi-million ounce potential of this belt. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Now, I found our next presenter quite intriguing. According to Google, the only thing that Jardee Kininmonth does is work. He has no digital footprint that doesn't include work, which is good news for us because that means he's dedicated to his role as the MD at Future Metals, so big tick there. And he obviously likes his work because he's the one who's always smiling. How are you going today, Jardee? Yeah, slowly?
I'm good. I'd say that's pretty good for a millennial as well, to not have a very expansive digital footprint.
Okay. Now, I was just thinking, Future Metals is progressing towards development. It's got the high-grade platinum, palladium, nickel deposit in the Phantom project. I'm reckoning that might be part of the reason that you're a happy camper, but I've got a feeling you've got more to share with us today, haven't you?
I do. That's what the next 15 minutes is going to be spent doing.
Right,
Sure.
we're going to be riveted. Let's make him welcome, everyone. Put your hands together for Jardee.
I'll just put this. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, very exciting time to be presenting the Future Metals story on the back of our announcement yesterday, which detailed that we do have a solution for the metallurgy at Panton. We've demonstrated repeatability to produce a high-grade saleable concentrate with high recoveries, and that's really unlocking the Panton asset and allowing us to make bold statements like we are aiming to build the first platinum group metals operation in Australia. Parallel to that, we're also delivering value through nickel sulfide exploration, and we've recently proved up the nickel sulfide potential of the Panton Sill and broader region with our 2022 drill program. So we are sitting on a very large and high-grade resource. We've got 5 million ounces of platinum palladium at a fairly equal split between the two, and about 250,000 tonnes of nickel. Importantly, we do have a high-grade chromatite reef within that holds 3 million ounces, and that's really what we're progressing our scoping study on, and that's what we have this form-fit flotation solution for. But that bulk mineralization also gives us significant expansion potential down the track. I mentioned the sulfide discovery potential as well. We've recently gotten the majority of assays back from our 2022 drill program, which does confirm that Panton doesn't just lay host to a chromatite PGM reef system, but it indeed hosts a potential contact style or conduit style deposit, which I'll go through in a bit more detail as well. Importantly, we are in the eminent mining jurisdiction of WA, and that's particularly prevalent given the supply dynamics of the PGM market, being that the majority of those metals comes from Russia and South Africa, which are particularly challenged jurisdictions. So we have a very strong team. It's important when pulling Panton together, which there's a bevy of historic work behind it, and we've managed to pull together a team that has the context to apply to that work. So we have a number of professionals who have worked across the Panton project over the last couple of decades. My background is in mining private equity and corporate strategy in the resources space. I was immediately previously at Galaxy Resources, which we merged with Orocobre to form Allchem, and prior to that I was at EMR Capital. I'm supported by Andrew Shepherd, who was formerly the head of technical services at St Barbara and holds the central role in the scoping study. And then we have a very strong geological team. So we've got Barbara Duggan, who's worked at all the major nickel sulfide camps in Canada, as well as in Kalgoorlie. Shane Hibbard, who was previously the senior geologist out at Panton when Platinum Australia were doing the resource drill out in the early 2000s. And then overseen by Dr. John Hronsky, who's an expert in these layered magmatic intrusives. So we'll touch on the market just briefly. The core demand driver for PGMs is the automotive sector, and that's set to continue. It's likely that product mix is going to change over the next decade or two. What we're going to see is an increased proportion of hybrids, fuel cells and electric vehicles taking up that mix, moving away from combustion engines. And it's important to note that hybrids use just as many PGMs as combustion engine vehicles do, and fuel cells use about 5 times as much platinum as a combustion engine vehicle does. And certainly seeing commentary from CEOs of the major automakers suggesting that it is going to need to be a 3-pronged approach to drive that clean energy transition in the personal mobility sector. You're going to need hybrids, you're going to need fuel cell vehicles, and you're going to need electric vehicles. And there's a wave of investment coming on the back of the Inflation Reduction Act and also the Green Industrial Plan out of the EU. So if you want exposure to hydrogen industry inputs, platinum is a key one of those. And the supply side is probably an even bigger tailwind for an Australian PGM deposit. 40% of the world's palladium comes from Russia, 10% of its platinum from Russia, and then another 40% from South Africa, and 75% of its platinum comes from South Africa as well. A lot of Russian supply is now disintegrated from Western consumers' supply chains going through China, which really leaves South Africa as holding the mantle for supply of PGMs into the Western world. It's in a particularly challenged spot at the moment. There's a state of emergency there at the moment, given the lack of power availability. And we're seeing commentary of the PGM majors producing there, saying that the situation is really becoming untenable. And really it's not a jurisdiction that they're looking to place more capital in. So if you take out the geological freak that is the Bushveld system and you remove Russia, you're in very rare company if you own a PGM resource, and particularly one that's as well located as us and being the highest grade or containing the highest grade resource as well. So we do sit 1 kilometre off the Great Northern Highway between Halls Creek and Kununurra in northern WA there. We've got access to the deep water port at Wyndham, the sealed airstrips at both Halls Creek and Kununurra, and there's potential to tie into the hydro scheme out of Lake Argyle with a potential downstream facility, which I'll jump into shortly. So the reef is across two discrete geological units. We've got the resource is across two discrete geological units, one being a high-grade reef that's been drilled across a strike extent of 5 kilometres down to a known depth of 800 metres. However, we are awaiting assay results from a deeper drill hole, which will likely extend that. The mineralised width is between 1 and 4 metres, and then that's surrounded by a bulk mineralisation that's been estimated down to 150 metres, as will likely only be extracted via open pit, but that extends across that 5 kilometre strike and has widths of 50 to 75 metres. So we have a defined project delivery strategy now, given that we have this metallurgical solution in place. This stage one that the scoping study is looking at is really focused on a high-grade, low-capital underground project, feeding into a pre-concentrating step being an ore sorter, which we've shown through bulk test work to recover 97% of the high-grade ore and sort the low-grade into a stockpile and remove waste. That pre-concentrated material then goes into a concentrator via a conventional flotation circuit to produce a high-grade saleable nickel PGM concentrate. And so that's one potential route is the saleable concentrate into the non-ferrous smelting market. The other route is to produce a suite of upgraded metals products through downstream integration. And because we have that high-grade concentrate, it means that we can look at a very low capital addition to our processing facilities to produce that upgraded metals products. And so it essentially skips that smelting step that the concentrate goes into. It improves our payabilities. It reduces the emissions that are associated with our products, which makes it really attractive as a potential premium product, differentiating it from the supply out of Russia and South Africa, which mainly rely on coal-fired power there. So ore sorting is one of the key steps to unlocking Panton. It's a very common technology used in South Africa in the chromite and PGM industry. The reason it works so well is because we have a chromatite reef that's surrounded by a dunite mineralization. The chromatite is about 50% more dense than the dunite, so standard X-ray transmission technology, which reads density, can sort very effectively. What this allows us to do is be less cautious about mining dilution within the mine and remove that dilution at surface through the ore sorter. And that ensures that the feed going into the flotation circuit that you're throwing a lot of the energy and reagents at is high grade and worth throwing the dollars at. So you decrease the size of your plant, but keep the metal output the same, and you decrease the OPEX and CAPEX by doing that. It also makes sure that you're reporting a clean input to your flotation circuit, removing waste and low grade, which can inhibit your flotation conditions. So we have partnered on a technical basis with Lifezone Metals. They're a large hydromet technology provider, as well as the owner of a Kabanga nickel mine in Tanzania. They're an investee of BHP in both the technology and their project. They're currently developing a hydromet facility with a South African producer currently, and their technology has been tested on Panton concentrate previously and has shown 99% plus recoveries across the majority of those metal suites. And what that really unlocks, as I said before, is it allows us to differentiate ourselves from that Russian and South African supply and tap into a more premium market, such as the hydrogen manufacturing industry, so the electrolyzers and fuel cell EVs. So we are the most progressed PGM deposit in Australia. We have a metallurgical solution in place with the benefit of 45,000 metres of drilling behind us. We're sitting on 3 granted mining leases. We have access to a decline that's already in place from prior owners. There's been flora, fauna, heritage surveys previously done at Panton with no red flags, and we have a bevy of design work across processing, mining, and NPI to draw on as well. So yeah, that's the first leg to our value delivery, being the scoping study leg on the existing resource. The second leg is this nickel copper sulfide discovery potential that sits outside of that resource. So the way that these things form is really multiple pulses of magma into a chamber. The reef tends to form in the middle of the chamber, and that's what's been drilled to date. That's what the resource relates to. But what you tend to find is the sulfide-rich mineralization sits along the base of these intrusions. And that's what had gone completely untested prior to our 2022 drilling program. And what we've shown in that program is that there is a low-grade halo of nickel sulfide sitting within our intrusion around that resource. And now we're truly narrowing in on that high-grade core. So what we do have and what we have found is a surface expression of that central high-grade core, which is this embayment that sits. You can see the embayment on this slide. The embayment that sits to the bottom of that tenement area. That was found undercover and is found from coincident stream sediment nickel copper anomalies, as well as anomalous base metal sulfides and high sulfide material from nearby drill holes. And what we think is that is the surface expression of a higher grade core that's trending towards the center of our intrusion. And that's what we'll be looking to test once the wet season ends in late April, early May. We've also recently picked up and increased our ground holding in the East Kimberley, which is a very underexplored region, particularly for nickel copper sulfides. And so that includes picking up the Panton North tenement directly adjoining ours, as well as the Copernicus North, which have multiple untested targets that have been defined from coincident geophysical and soil anomalies there as well. Our approach to ESG is really focused on community at this stage. It really is important to develop a social license to operate in the Kimberley. And we've been building a very strong relationship with the Malangowan and who are looking to use Future Metals as a positive case study for how mining companies can engage with traditional owners up there. So ahead of us, we have the assay results coming in the next few weeks of our deep drill hole through the entire stratigraphy of Panton, which is hole PS414, which we're very excited about. We've currently got the downhole EM crew toiling away out there as we speak. We're going to be doing a bit of ground truthing over the next few weeks, and then look to go out and test that embayment target and look to potentially drill a hole into that central zone as well, where we've got that magmatic sulfide representation. And then clearly we've got a bevy of activities along the scoping study front. So we're looking at redeveloping our resource model to factor in the metallurgical solution. And then that'll unlock updating our mine design work, as well as process design and delivery on that scoping study. So we're well capitalized to deliver on that scoping study and this next phase of drilling. And I hope you agree that we're great leverage to some great macro factors, being supply shocks out of Russia and South Africa, and growth in the hydrogen industry driving increased demand for platinum. Stop it there.
Thanks, Jardee. Now, all of you people standing up over there, do you like standing up? Would you want a seat? I've got some really lovely seats down here in the front. We'll only be watching you for one session, just for 15 minutes. You're more than welcome to come and sit down the front here. Go on, come and sit down and not be the naughty kids up the back. Some of you are watching through the window too. There are a couple of us who are old enough to remember the crying rooms at the movie where people would poke their head through the glass window. It was quite amusing. Right, how are you going, sir? You got the buzzer directions all ready. Yes?
Ready to go.
You've got them? All right.
You've stopped Googling me?
Pardon?
Have you stopped Googling?
Yeah, I'm good. Okay,
Good.
wait.
Thanks.
No, I haven't. This is the problem. If you're up next presenting it all today, we've got a few problems with audio on the stage here. It echoes like crazy, and it's actually really hard to understand one another. So let me talk you in. I'll talk you in now. So this is our final presenter before lunch. His name is David Southam. He's the MD at Cygnus Metals, and he spent the last 12 years of his career dedicated to the battery metal space of lithium and nickel. Now, last year, he was recognised as the mining CEO of the year. And that was following, look, his little bashful look there. That was following that rapid delineation period with Mincor Resources. They went from that $60 million market capitalisation to $1.2 billion in 3 years. And he did that all during the global pandemic. I think that's a round of applause, number one. Yes?
No.
No? So you've got a little bit of corporate experience there that you can pull through. You've raised a little bit of capital, in fact, upward of $3 billion over the years. You've done a little bit of negotiating with significant offtake contracts in base metals and lithium as well. What are you doing with Cygnus Metals? That's what we'd like to know. Take it away, sir. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'm glad you didn't Google, because given my heritage, I thought there might be a few sheep jokes coming out or something like that. So that's always good to see. Now, I know I am the last thing here, last presentation before lunch. So my job is to make this presentation both interesting, but also educational about Cygnus. So I thought I'd start off. This is day 2 for me at Cygnus Metals. So day 1 yesterday was getting an announcement ready, which I'll talk about, that went out today. And day 2 is presenting here at RIU. And so this slide is, why on earth would you swap what I was doing on the left for the last 6 months after taking some time off? It's a little bit of skiing, a bit of golf in Fiji, to then my wife took this photo of me. She thought I was like a schoolboy at their first day back at work. So why on earth would you swap that sort of lifestyle for Cygnus? And then look, there are some fantastic reasons. It would also be remiss of me not to mention that it is Valentine's Day today, if it hasn't already been mentioned. And as my beautiful wife said to me this morning, the best Valentine's Day gift I could give her was to go back to work. So why on earth would you swap, which was a pretty fun time on the left, on my left, for the right? And it comes down to 5 Ps. Now, I've had to try and be inventive with what those 5 Ps are. You talk about people, product, proximity, permitting, and also position. So if we just talk about people, and there are a number of people from the Cygnus team here today making up the numbers, which I'd like to acknowledge, but also some of our crew who are in Quebec at the moment, working at the drill rigs. So I want to acknowledge them. But you want to be involved and get out of bed with people that have a history of delivering shareholder wealth and also building companies, and to be 100% aligned. And everyone involved with Cygnus are shareholders. Product. So moving into lithium in North America, electrification, which I've been around for many years. One of the roles that I had previously was as a director of Kininmonth Resources. And I remember cutting the first offtake deal with Tesla. And the global procurement head for Tesla happened to be a nickel executive. So there's a plug for my old shop, Mincor. But you could see very early on, this is the first lithium hydroxide deal cut with Tesla. You could see very early on that OEMs were going to move further upstream. And it wouldn't surprise me within the next year or two that you'll see car manufacturers actually own mines. And it was the head of LG Chemicals who was quoted yesterday as he's not necessarily concerned about the price of lithium today. He's more concerned about buying mines and getting into mines. And we're in a very hot space in James Bay and Quebec, which I'll also talk about. Which brings me to proximity. James Bay, Quebec. There is a significant land rush on there at the moment. And luckily enough, we were one of the first movers into that region, which I'll talk about. But I'll also talk about our proximity to a highway, to green electricity, to a camp, and that green electricity comes from hydro. From a permitting perspective, Canada sometimes gets a bit of a rap. It takes a long time to permit. I'll point out that we are not around a lake where we're drilling at the moment. In fact, the lake is not close. And from a First Nations perspective, we're the lowest level in terms of required engagement, but just because that's required doesn't mean that you shouldn't do more. Position, I was trying to find a word for funding, so I came up with position, which is financial position. We have $13 million in the bank and a very, very supportive shareholder base. So a few key features. I've touched on where we are in James Bay, Quebec. We picked up the Pontax project, 700 metres of strike, And let me tell you, when you see some of the images, even an old accountant like myself could do the explorer's job. It is a while back. It sits out. It's particularly obvious, and we'll talk about some of the results from that. And bear in mind, we've only had this project for 5 months, and we've already got, we will very shortly have 3 drill rigs running. We've just cut an ice road into the location, and we've got 3 drill rigs running. So this gets back to proximity again, where you can see where our Pontax project is located. You know, one of the things I've learned from many years in the resources space is that you always find good deposits near other major deposits. We're 30 kilometres away from Allchem. There's another deposit called Rose, Sayona's in the area, Namaska's in the area. It's a very, very hot region, but you can see we're right near the main road, which from a logistical perspective is a great advantage. And some of those intersections that we inherited, and this was over many years where the previous Canadian entity put in about 24 holes and hit 24 hits of lithium. We've got nice grade and good normal style intersections, and I'd say actually better than normal. There are some that are significant around in the market at the moment, but these are exceptional intersections. So lithium in Quebec, the Quebec government is doing everything it can. There's effectively a race between Quebec and Ontario at the moment to be the key supplier of battery minerals. Quebec accounts for 20% of mining output in Canada. It's the largest producer of various metals, and the Quebec government has come up with a plan and a funded plan to assist companies like ours to delineate new resources and ultimately bring them into production. And reminding, we're close to Allchem, and we've also heard the news that they're looking at a downstream processing facility. So it has all those ingredients that you look for in a project. A little bit on the share price. You get the ups and downs with share price like all companies do. Cygnus was a shell, but until 5 months ago, that's when we secured that project with a couple of our geos who scoured the world with the assistance of Canaccord. So there's a bottle of wine. I've acknowledged one of the sponsors to find an exceptional project. And we've got some really interesting shareholders in there. You would have go backwards. You would have noted the image right at the start. I've got a couple of photos up there if you can make those out. One's of Mike Naylor, who's a major shareholder, and Steve Parsons. So that makes it fun sometimes. And we've also got large institutional. We've got Merck, who is normally just a gold investor, but backs the people and backs in our project who hold 9%. And that register is slowly changing. Some of the people involved, I won't go through everyone due to limits on time, but the key point here is that all these people have been involved in value creation, whether it be Bellevue, Mincor. You've got Gareth Reynolds, who's at the booth, who has been involved in lithium for many years, and including SQM. Duncan Grieve, who's our geologist out at Quebec at the moment. He was involved in delineation of Bellevue. So some really good people. So this is the image where I say, I could have come along and discovered this. You can see the whale back there. You can see the pegmatite outcropping. And I've already gone through the historical intersections. There's an image of the drill core that we had a look at as part of the due diligence. It's 700 metres, but this just dips below cover. And so remember that comment, because I'll show you an example of that shortly. So today we announced confirmation of a previous announcement in November where we talked about visual intersections of pegmatite, spodumene-bearing pegmatite. And holes 27 and 28 came out and confirmed those today. What was really important about that intersection is all those white holes that you see previously delineated or previously had intersections less than 100 metres. So it was a low-hanging fruit. So we've gone in and we've drilled down to 230 metres, and guess what? We've extended. We're still hitting pegmatites and spodumene bearing pegmatites up to 16 metres wide. Some of the intersections, multiple intervals, are even up to 3% lithium. But on average, they come around the 1.2 to 1.4% with high grade intervals in between. We have only scratched the surface. And I again remind you, we've only been here for 5 months from the acquisition, and we're 2 from 2. 2 holes in, 2 exceptional sets of assays that have come out. It is a stacked pegmatite system as well, which is you should know. So there's some of the drill core. Now, these slides haven't been updated for today's announcement, which really does show it wasn't actually on purpose because we're presenting today. We literally got the assays in and got the announcement out as soon as we possibly could. But 13 metres there, 13.3 was one of the intersections that we announced today. And if you're a geologist, you'll pick up that that's spodumene bearing pegmatites. It's a 75 metre wide zone, and again, I remind you that we've just now doubled the depth. And so with moving now to 3 rigs, our whole life now is about putting out our inaugural mineral resource around mid-year. So within a year, we're going to go from acquiring a piece of ground and farming into it to hopefully coming out with our first mineral resource. And really that's just going to be a foundation. And we've been particularly active. In the 5 months, we've also done 3 other deals. So we are building our ground holding in Quebec. And look, we are not in Quebec to knit quilts. We're here to do deals, we're here to drill, and we will drill exceptionally quickly and rapidly. Couple of images there, which just shows you the type of the type of rocks that we're encountering. Along Pontax, we've got 44 kilometres roughly of strike. Pontax's central is only a small part of that. We've also been doing some rock sampling, some rock chip sampling, coming out with 3.3 and 2.5%, but also the pathfinders for lithium with good tantalum results. And a lot of this is actually undercover. So I heard an earlier presenter talking about LiDAR. We've flown LiDAR. It helps understand the topography, and lo and behold, you strip back a little bit of the surface and there you find pegmatites straight underneath. So that's what the LiDAR has enabled us to do, and we'll have a heavy trenching program coming up. So that's our ground holding at the moment within Quebec, but I dare say this time next year that will look different. And then finally, I don't want to forget, we do have some really good West Australian assets, which are in the very, very early stages, looking for those pathfinders, which we have encountered. And so there will be some constant news flow about our Australian projects, but we do have quite a lot of land here in Western Australia. So over the next few months, you'll probably, you may even get sick of hearing about Cygnus Metals, because we will have a lot of news flow. It'll be, we've got 2,000 metres currently sitting, being assayed. We'll have the 3rd drill rig, which has arrived, and we'll be working soon. So we've got 2 running at the moment, and then heading towards that first maiden or inaugural mineral resource mid-year. And you notice that we've put it over 3 months just to give ourselves a little bit of wriggle room depending on assay turnarounds. So I'll probably leave it there. Thanks, Christy.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. Last, I think you held the room quite nicely. So what did you get your poor wife?
Huh?
What did you get your wife?
Me leaving the home.
That's not good. You should go and speak to that man there. He's invested in his relationship. They're going to have a chat with him. He's very, very wise. All right, team, lunch, 1:45, we have our keynote presentation. So please try and be back in the room in time for that. If you're looking for a bit of a wander and a stretch your legs, and you've loved all the food that we have, and you're not local to Freo and you like a great ice cream, cooled ice.
Hi, my name is Brad Gurry and I'm the CEO of Social Suite. Social Suite's an environmental, social and corporate governance reporting platform, ESG, We're proud to be supporters of the RIU conference, and I'd firstly like to start by congratulating Social Suite customers that are here presenting throughout the duration of the conference. Black Canyon, Coda Minerals, Gallon Lithium, Galileo Mining, Helix Resources, International Graphite, and Nordic Nickel. These companies, along with 80 ASX micro to small caps, understand the importance of ESG to create long-term organisational value. The Social Suite platform is specifically designed for micro to small caps in supporting them, one, to attract capital from investors that value ESG disclosures. Two, creating revenue through responding to supply chain requests and the negotiation of offtake agreements. Three, mitigating organisational risk while building brand value. The Social Suite platform is easy and affordable for the smallest of organisations to get started with ESG. This is complemented by our industry expert ESG coaches who will help you with your ESG journey. We wish all companies and investors a successful RIU conference, and we're here to help with your ESG needs.